Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Protoss strategy. Now the player we're going to be focusing on here is White Raw, the Protoss player, and the opponent is Happy. So let's just go ahead and jump right into White Raw Vision. So what are we going to be looking at today? Well, what we're actually going to be taking a look at is a 4-gate Robo and using a Warp Prism to do some drop Zealot bombing harass and kind of really mess up a Terran opponent's econ. And we're just going to keep an eye on what White Raw is doing, and essentially what happens is he spots that they are in close positions in terms of air. White Raw, through his scouting, is going to realize that his opponent is right over here. And with that, a Warp Prism drop harass can be very, very effective. Now in terms of the build order, it's going to be a fairly standard build, except for that 4th gate. A 3-gate Robo is something you see a lot of, but a 4-gate Robo is a little pushing it. It's kind of all-in-y, but if you do enough damage, it can definitely be worth your while. So a little opening build, going to be pretty standard. We're going to see a 9 Pylon, 12 Gateway. There's also going to be a 14 Assimilator, and then right after this Gateway comes in, there's an 18 Cybernetics Core that gets dropped down. So everything's been pretty standard so far in the game, and actually not going to be getting a second gas, just sticking on that one gas for now. So let's just slow it on down for a moment. We can see right now White Raw moving up. He spots where his opponent is right now. He scouted the other 2 bases, saw the Marine up front, and you did actually see him pull back with that probe because you don't want to push in once there's a Marine on the ramp. You're actually not going to be able to make it in. If he micros a Marine properly, he'll kill it before you even get any good scouting information. Now, in terms of what you're going to be doing, okay, you start off the Cybernetics Core finishes, so obviously you get that Warp Gate research. What you're going to see is actually White Raw is not going to try to drop his Robo until he is positive that SCV is out of the base. So what we're going to see here is we have this probe here, and he could drop the Robo. We're going to see, ideally you drop it as soon as you could afford it, right? So he can afford it right now. He can afford it, he can afford it, he can afford it. But he wasn't dropping it right away, and he waited until now. I'm going to pause really quick. You can see he actually waited until he had 20 extra Vespene. And going off of one Assimilator, that's actually a lot of extra. When you're on 2, you can pile up to 20 pretty fast. But it actually takes a little bit of time off of one Assimilator to get up to 20 over the exact amount that you need. But White Raw waited until this exact moment because it wasn't until now that SCV left the base. You never want to show your opponent kind of unnecessarily what you're going for. That's pretty much the last thing that you ever want to do. So always wait until that scout is out of your base before you take that next step beyond your first Gateway and a Cybernetics Core. Pretty much once your Stalker's in play, you can almost be certain that they're going to be headed out of there because the Stalker's going to kill any scouting unit inside of your base. So we're going to see that Robo is down. There's that 2nd and 3rd Gateway, and there's that 4th Gateway. In terms of timing, the Warp Gate research, that it started at 24 supply, 27 supplies when that Robo came down, and then 28 supplies when these additional 3 Gateways came down. And again, he probably could have gotten that Robo a little sooner had that scout not been in his base. So if you don't have a scout in your base, you're probably going to be able to afford that Robo at around 26. So what's going to happen here is you're going to see that Warp Gate research just about finished. He pretty much chrono boosted that all the way through. I think White Raw used maybe the first 2 chrono boost on his probes, and then the rest were pretty much exclusively for that Warp Gate research. You want to time it so that you actually have that Warp Prism coming out right when this Warp Gate research finishes. You can see that's just about finished. What he's going to do is going to warp in a couple Zealots and a... well, no, he just does have the Stalker, so he's just going to warp in a couple Zealots. So what we're going to be taking a look at, why this is so effective, well, oh, look at that. Scout returning into the base, now Happy, is fully aware of what's going on, but it's a little too late at this point. But what's going to happen is actually this isn't going to work ideally for him. We can see White Raw moving on forward. He's going to be dropping those guys one at a time. And actually, if you don't know how to do that, we've talked about it in the past, but I'll let you know. Let me just push this back really quick. Alright, so what's going to happen is, normally if you drop on the ground, your transport is going to stop in one position and then drop them once at a time. So what's happening right here is White Raw is just clicking drop. He's clicking on the Warp Prism, and then it can drop them one at a time. That's precisely how that works, just in case you may not know. But what's going to happen here is we can see White Raw, even just with this small force in the base, is absolutely devastating to what Happy has. And Happy actually gets a scan off. He was safe with that Warp Prism up here because it was out of the vision, but because of the scan, his Marines were able to shoot that. But look at this, just a few Marines and just a few Zealots and a Stalker inside of this Terran player's base early in the game can be so devastating. I mean, this drop came around 6:30, I believe it was actually inside of the base. Do keep in mind, Happy, of course, teched up. He was going for Cloaked Banshees. Had he been going for a 3 racks or any sort of early Marine Marauder heavy build, he would have been much more suited to actually fend this off. And in fact, had he done that and also killed White Raw's Warp Prism, then he probably would have had no problem at all. But because he was teching up, and because White Raw was able to get that amount of Zealots in the base early game, you could just see how much damage that was. And let's take a look at the unit loss tab. You can see 17 workers killed. Now that's pretty much going to be your primary focus. Obviously, you want to take care of any Marines and Marauders, or if the Banshee's in play like it is in this game, you want to take care of those guys, of course. But besides that, you're not necessarily going for buildings. You just kind of want to hurt the economy. Now, what White Raw is going to be transitioning into is during that harassment, he knew how much damage he did, so he's going to be getting out this Twilight Council and then actually working up to Blink Stalkers, just kind of as a secondary wave. And then also, obviously, after you get your Warp Prism out, you want to get an Observer, and we're actually going to see White Raw with 2 Observers because he knows Cloak Banshees are coming, so he wants to be sure that he can cover all portions of his base with that Cloak Detection. And then, of course, in the future, he's going to be using this Observer for those Blink Stalkers. You can see that Blink research starting right now, being chrono boosted in. He's going to try to get that out as much as possible. So yes, very effective. White Raw is in fact also going to actually try to move down for an expand just because of the vast amount of damage that he's done. So what I want to kind of make note of is the fact that that didn't even go perfectly for White Raw, and he still did a ton of damage. Yes, he was good. Yes, he was in a good position because Happy did tech up, but the fact that he lost that Warp Prism was terrible because he had 4 gateways that he could have warped in through, and if he had gotten like another 1 or 2 warp-ins into the base, basically had he not lost that Warp Prism and he was able to get some more warp-ins in, he would have surefire won the game right there, and he probably would have even had a good chance if the Terran player was going for a 3 racks Marine Marauder, because even going for a 3 racks Marine Marauder, if you're doing a 4 gate inside of their base with a Warp Prism, that's going to be a heck of a lot of damage because it's just going to be a vast amount of units. So you're going to see White Raw using that Q Blink command. We did talk about that in the Like a Boss episode for Blink Stalkers, about holding down shift and then blinking up to the high ground with that vision. You're also going to see him blink defensively here by peeling these guys back once they get within danger. You just want to do as much damage as possible without actually losing any Stalkers. You let them lose their shields, and no big deal. If they lose their shields, it's really not the end of the world at all. As long as you can just soften up these units and do a little bit of damage. You can even see he's going to be going for this building and going to actually force the repair, which, keep in mind, you don't even have to necessarily kill the building. If you can force the repair, that costs resources, and that's setting him even further back when he's already far behind in the resource game as it is. So White Raw is just going to be continuing up this harassment with these Blink Stalkers, and it's just so incredibly effective, like I mentioned. So pretty interesting build, really like it. Keep in mind that the only reason White Raw was able to expand, given the fact that he went kind of all in with a 4 gate Robo drop with that Warp Prism and also Blink Stalkers, the only reason he was actually able to expand was just because of the fact that he did so much damage. Had he not done as much economic damage as he did during that first wave, that first attack, then he definitely wouldn't have been able to expand safely. And you can see right there, Happy actually goes ahead and just calls the good game. So pretty cool build here. And again, keep in mind, it didn't go perfectly for White Raw. Ideally, what's going to happen is you've got your 4 gates. You're going to be dropping that first wave of units into the base of your opponent, and then you're going to be warping things in. The other thing to keep in mind too is that actually Happy did scout that was coming. You saw that SCV move in right at the last moment before White Raw actually moved out. So that was the reason that Happy had Marines sitting on the corner of the base, and that's actually one of the main reasons he was able to shoot that Warp Prism out of the sky. So if you can just make sure that secondary scout doesn't make it in your base too, this can be definitely a pretty hard surprise attack against your opponent. So there you have it. Let me just go over the build order that White Raw ended up using in this game. Again, it was a very standard opener. 9 Pylon, 12 Gateway, 14 Assimilator, 18 Cybernetics Core, 24 once that Cybernetics Core finished. That's when the Warp Gate research started coming through. Remember, we saw that Robo got dropped down to 27 supply. Keep in mind, as long as the scouting SCV or whatever unit it is out of your base, then you can go ahead and drop that next building. So if you're going for a 4 gate, you would want to wait for that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th gateway until the scout's out of your base. And if you're going for a Robo, again, you wait till that scout's out of the base before you drop it. But yes, the Robo did come at 27 in this game, and then the 3 additional gateways came at 28 supply. And then we saw White Raw go for the drop. He did a lot of damage, as we saw over here. And then after that, once he realized he had done so much damage, did that transition into Blink Stalkers and also went ahead and got up an Expo. But can be very, very effective. I think just showing you guys that 4-gate Warp Prism drop is going to be pretty solid in a lot of your games. Also keep in mind, this is going to be something that is most effective on any map that is close positional. That's definitely going to be most effective effective in that situation. So there you have it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Keep watching and keep owning.